Folks, thanks for tuning in again today, giving you the nuances behind some of the big headlines and news that matters. And keep the comments coming. Those are very helpful as we continue on and continue to grow on the podcast here. Well, the sad news breaking out today, one of the items, if you recall, the so-called Rhode Island arena tragedy where a number of people were killed, were murdered. And Gerald Dorgan, now the grandfather, has died. You recall his daughter, his grandson were killed. Heroic efforts made to stop the killer. It's very interesting in the media coverage where you get American outlets are not afraid to mention that the killer was transgendered biological male, but Canadian outlets seem paralyzed to talk about that. CBC will not use that word at all. They did go as far today in reporting the death of Gerald Dorgan. They did go as far as to say that the killer sometimes, his name was Robert, sometimes goes by the name of Roberta, but that's as far as they've been willing to go. And all we've been asking is that there be some research, more research done on the whole area of SSRIs, the drug that goes in many cases and seems to be having some detrimental effect on individuals. It's not the fact of their orientation, it's the fact perhaps of the chemicals that they're taking. Well, the Trump tariffs continue to roll on despite what the Supreme Court has said, and as you've probably heard, continuing on, he is saying he's going to keep the tariffs in place depending on the country. So affecting Canada, steel is still going to come in at 50%, copper is going to be hit at 50%, furniture 25%, and softwood lumber coming in at 25%. But the interesting thing is it's only can last 150 days, and then Congress can throw those out. And any of the tariffs that apply to or affect the Canada, US, Mexico agreement are not going to be affected. So lots of opportunity there for Canada to continue to vigorously keep their taxes down, keep their input costs down so that it can be competitive and Canadian products can still be competitive going into the US. And maybe take a second look at the constant push we get from the Canadian government for businesses to more align with China or more align with Cuba. We're encouraging Prime Minister Carney, please, to ask the questions of the Cuban government. Why are they sending soldiers and resources to Russia to continue to kill Ukrainians? It seems to be a little bit inconsistent with Canadian views. So the tariffs continue to roll on. Prime Minister Carney rolling into India. Now, back in 2008, when Prime Minister Harper, at the time Conservative Prime Minister, allowed me to open up the trade corridors more broadly with India, and it was Prime Minister Modi at the time, and good relations, good trade deals being struck. Not sure why Prime Minister Carney is saying this is a brand new thing, but anyway, I encourage him. That's good to keep those relationships going indeed with India. They should at the same time, just as Prime Minister Carney is always quick to condemn just about anything that comes out of the US, to also encourage them to be asking Prime Minister Modi about the religious persecution that continues in India. And we can still trade with other countries, but we still should be willing to address that issue. And at the same time, announcement today out of Prime Minister Carney's office, $8 million more to Cuba. And again, ask the question, at the very least, ask the question, why are we giving millions of dollars to Cuba while Cuba sends soldiers to Russia to kill Ukrainians? So let's keep these things in mind. Well, the Epstein Files is, for media anyway, the gift that just keeps on giving every day. There's more and more revelations, apparently thousands more pages to come out. Has just been revealed today that a large locker has been now unlocked where Epstein has kept all kinds of videos and files. The president of Harvard now stepping down because of his relationship with Epstein. And this morning, you want to turn into the news because the Clintons are now being deposed, and investigators and elected members going actually to their home to do the deposition. Hillary Clinton being deposed today, and Bill Clinton tomorrow. A little bit of a reaction coming from the public saying anybody else who gets deposed has to show up and appear in Congress or appear in front of cameras, and the Clintons are able to do this in private. Just to make clear, very clear, the Clintons are not being accused of wrongdoing. This is a deposition for information's sake, and it seems to be unfolding much as it has with former Prince Andrew, where Yes, of course, it would be a concern if they'd been involved, anybody's been involved with underage girls, but these ones are focused on information that may have been passed on to Epstein, again, raising the question, how did this guy get into such a position internationally, worldwide, whether we're talking about Bill Gates, whether we're talking about world leaders, what got him into the position where he could actually be taking trade secrets from other governments, trade and even security secrets. So let's see what comes out of those depositions that are happening today. Well, it's been fascinating to see the Democrats are being accused. Nobody stood up during the Speech of the Union, State of the Union. Nobody shook hands, but there was a Democrat senator, John Fetterman. He actually was on camera. He shook hands with Trump when Trump came walking in, and he stood up and applauded a number of the times. None of the other Democrats did. And they asked him about that, and he, if you remember, there was kind of a funny scene where outside there were a bunch of people dressed up as green frogs, and they were called the Portland Frog Parade. And Senator Fetterman saying he really didn't think dancing green frogs was going to be advancing the agenda of the Democrat Party. So interesting, it wasn't 100% silent on that front. Well, Austin Matthews is captain of the U.S. hockey team, he's also captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And of course, as a lot of teams do, they accept an invitation to go to the White House when they win. And quite understandably, the team went. And Canadian fans, I guess it shows our inferiority complex as Canadians, going crazy on Matthews that he went to the White House. Hey, Canadians, wake up. The guy's American. He's U.S. He got invited to the White House. He shook hands with the president. He would have done it if it had been Obama, Biden, or Clinton. So give your heads a shake. Canadians also reacting in the media negatively. Another economic report coming out which says that the GDP, that's the gross domestic product, that's the estimated wealth of a nation split up among all its citizens. It's used to measure relative wealth, saying that Canadian GDP is lower than the state of Alabama, which is the lowest in GDP ratings among the 50 U.S. states, and many Canadians going berserk. Folks, these are just economic facts. Give your head a shake again. And they use the example, they took a 20-year-old male, what he is able to, on average, what he's able to purchase in terms of a home, a down payment, groceries, and car, and compared that with a Canadian, shows Canadian are further behind the economic 8-ball, as it were, and Canadians going a little crazy. How about Canadians maybe taking a look on our high taxation system, high regulatory regime that drives businesses out of the country? So let's be a little more, let's calm down and be a little more circumspect on that. Well, AI constantly getting analysis, as it maybe should. AI overall, you've heard me a number of times saying, of course, artificial intelligence offers huge benefits to citizens and to people everywhere, along with the detriments. It's like the discovery of fire. Of course, we need heat and we need fire, and a lot of people also get burned by it if they don't use it right. So it has to be looked at, it has to be regulated. And a report coming out today about the rising amount of anti-Semitic material that's available, whether we're talking about Meta or whether we're talking about Anthropic, whether we're talking about Claude, the anti-Semitic material that is made available, and then the generated material. So images of Hitler and others with new voice, with his voice added. It's really spilling over on these large language models, as they're called, and some of the heads of these big corporations are saying, well, there's nothing you can do about it. Well, when people reacted about all the child porn that was available on these various networks, yes, they did step up, and they have put in some safeguards and guardrails. They could do the same on this other material. Let's wait, let's watch, and let's see if they do. It's good people are raising it. Well, the Canadian courts made a recent, very interesting ruling. Some have been following in the drug trial and the murder, accessory to murder trial of Jason Tate. Jason Tate was involved in the murder of another man along with some colleagues of his. It looked like a drug deal gone bad, but he was charged with accessory to murder. And when the guy showed up at the door, he and his colleagues, they beat him up pretty severely. They tied him up They killed him, they dismembered him, they took his body and planted it, hid it on a First Nations reserve, and the judge has ruled that he should only, Jason Tate, who's been accessory to murder, should only get half the sentence that people normally get because he's First Nations Indigenous. And that's raising some real concerns about, do we have a system that is colorblind? Do we have a system that, of course, there's always going to be mitigating circumstances, but this one has really caught some attention. It's called the Gladue principle, the well-known Supreme Court case in the Canadian courts, which ruled that in another case, the gentleman by the name of Gladue would not have to face the same type of sentencing for serious crime because he was First Nations or Indigenous. So hopefully that's going to take a second look there. As we hear about snowbirds, Canadian snowbirds not coming to Florida as much as they used to because of the anti-Trump sentiment of the tariffs, and I've said before, I do not agree with tariffs. I don't think it's a good, sound economic policy, but I'm not going to, as they say, cut off my nose to spite my face. I've got friends I was talking to recently who said they were going to go to Hawaii this year for their holidays, but they canceled their Hawaii trip because they don't like Trump. And I kind of scratch my head and say to them, what does going to Hawaii have to do with President Trump? And I said, by the way, where are you going? And they said, Cuba. Okay, so I said to them, so you're going to take your dollars and invest in a communist regime that has a horrific level of human rights violations, but you're not going to go to Hawaii. Go figure. Anyway, the significant moves now, more and more companies now, 3 more major AI companies and 1 more major infrastructure company announcing relocating to Florida because of the low taxation regime, because of relative freedom, and because of a regulatory regime that isn't quite as stacked as some other areas. So tax policy has consequences, regulatory policy has consequences, and Florida seems to be benefiting. You might be interested in, on the health side, a ketogenic, not entirely a diet, but a ketogenic approach of not so worried about the high fat, but definitely low carbs. The medical associations are pointing to those plagued by seizures, that they see a reduction in seizures that's quantifiable on this ketogenic diet, and there is more research going on there. In terms of breakthroughs on research, a Canadian 19-year-old has now been, and they say it's miraculous, the treatment that he's been on, treating a severe immune system disorder that he's had it since he was young, was told he would probably be dying at an early age, is now completely off of all the prescriptions that he was taking to try and support his immune system. The miracle drug that's been helping him or has got him off of this is from a medical company called Prime Medicine in the US, and he's reported to be entirely free of symptoms of that immune disease. So good news on that front. For those of you who are wondering about what's going on in the movie industry, Zootopia 2 has now passed the Minecraft movie. I don't know how many watched the Minecraft movie. It's kind of fun. My grandkids liked it. But Zootopia 2 has passed and become the top-selling movie for 2025, $242 million US in terms of revenues. And just in case you think you're running out of coffee, Dunkin' Donuts has had a trial going on in New England. I don't mean a trial in the courts, but I mean in the markets. And they've been marketing the possibility and the acceptability of their 48-ounce coffee, a 48-ounce coffee cup. It's called the Bucket. It's selling for $8.89, and apparently it's hugely popular. So folks, have a drink of coffee, stay awake, keep those comments coming, and thanks very much for tuning in again today.